My current event project was about should drugs be legalized. Drug legalization removes all penalties for possession and personal use of a drug. With legalization, both the supply and possession of illegal drugs are legally controlled, much like tobacco or alcohol. Even if there are limits in place for age or possession, you won't be breaking any laws. In November 2012, Colorado and Washington state passed ballot initiatives legalizing marijuana, making the United States the first country in the world to legalize the commercial production, sale, and use of marijuana. Besides undermining the black market incentives to produce and sell drugs, legalization could remove or at least reduce problems that cause concern about crime, corruption, and violence. This is the drug timeline. It starts off in 1937 with the Marijuana Tax Act. This federal law placed a tax on the sale of drugs such as marijuana. In 1970, President Nixon signed Controlled Substances Act, which calls for the regulations of certain drugs and substances. In 1971, Nixon officially declared a war on drugs, stating that drug abuse was public enemy number one. Between 1973 and 1977, 11 states decriminalized marijuana possession. In 1986, President Reagan signed an act that would resume the intense punishment for drug-related crimes. In 1993, the states created a 3 strikes and you're out rule, meaning punishment for drug possession intensify as you move up strikes. In 1996, cannabis use in California became legal for those suffering from painful and serious diseases. In 2012, Washington and Colorado became the first states to legalize cannabis for recreational use. As of 2021, 18 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized the possession and personal use of marijuana for recreational purposes. So before the video, this is some video background. Marijuana is a psychoactive drug and the most commonly used illegal drug in the world. The word psychoactive refers to substances that change brain function, resulting in changes of mood and perception. Some argue that this aspect of marijuana can be used medically to treat a whole host of conditions, while others argue that it is an illegal substance for a reason. In this video, you will see the arguments for and against medical marijuana into 3 groups: arguments about its ability to reduce symptoms of certain medical conditions and the health risk associating with smoking marijuana, as well as arguments about its addictiveness and whether it is a gateway drug.
Cannabis, or marijuana, is a psychoactive drug and the most commonly used illegal drug in the world. The word psychoactive refers to substances that change brain function, resulting in changes of mood and perception. Some argue that this aspect of marijuana can be used medically to treat a whole host of conditions, whilst others argue that it is an illegal substance for a reason. In this video, I've put the arguments for and against medical marijuana into 3 groups. Arguments about its ability to reduce the symptoms of certain medical conditions, the health risks associated with smoking marijuana, as well as arguments about its addictiveness / whether or not it is a gateway drug. Proponents of legalizing marijuana on medical grounds argue that it provides effective pain relief for those with chronic pain, as well as reducing the muscle spasms associated with conditions such as Alzheimer's and epilepsy. Proponents reference multiple peer-reviewed surveys by medical practitioners, as well as the accounts of users of the drug. Marijuana's ability to increase appetite is also emphasized, as this helps out people who experience nausea and vomiting from conditions such as HIV/AIDS, as well as those undergoing chemotherapy for cancer. Opponents of marijuana being legalized on medical grounds argue that there is no such thing as medical marijuana because the drug's health risks outweigh any supposed benefits, as well as the fact that there are plenty of other legal options available. Opponents also allege that marijuana use results in psychosis and apathy, and that as a smoke substance, it is an irritant to the throat and lungs and reduces the respiratory immune system. Proponents respond by arguing that marijuana is nowhere near as dangerous as tobacco, a legal substance, and that there are no cases of lung cancer or other lung diseases being attributed to marijuana use. The final group of arguments relating to medical marijuana use relates to its addictiveness. Opponents of medical marijuana legalization argue that marijuana is a highly addictive substance, its addictiveness increasing the younger consumption starts. According to the 2012 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 2.7 million people in the USA are dependent on marijuana. That's to say that they experience withdrawal symptoms when they stop taking the drug. Furthermore, opponents argue that marijuana use is correlated with cigarette smoking, as well as the consumption of other illegal drugs such as cocaine and amphetamines, making it a gateway drug. Proponents of medical marijuana legalization argue that for the vast majority of people, marijuana is neither addictive nor a gateway drug. Whilst conceding that some people who smoke marijuana also take other illegal substances, proponents also argue that this is due to the illegal market on which marijuana is sold, and that legalization would do away with this aspect.
Some pros and cons about this topic are: pros are drugs can be regulated. The different types of substances could be more closely controlled. It avoids criminalizing users. People who are criminalized by their addictions may feel they have less stake in society. It may reduce drug gangs. Legalization could undermine existing drug gangs and reduce drug-related violence. And drugs can be taxed. The governments could bring in tax revenue for legalized drugs markets. Some cons are: more people can try legalized drugs. It is often argued that more people could experiment with drugs if they were legal, who otherwise would not. Drug tourism could become a problem unless other countries followed suit. Other countries that decriminalized or legalized drugs could attract drug tourists. It just sends the wrong message. Legalizing drugs could send the wrong message, suggesting that it is more socially acceptable to use drugs. A quote from Barack Obama is that my administration's position is that legalization is not the answer. Another quote is from Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who says, I think what everybody believes and argues with, and to be frank with myself, is that the current approach to the drug trade is not working, but it is not clear what we should do. Impacts on society. Legalizing drugs might lead the society to conclude that since drug use is legal, it is more acceptable or safe, which may increase the number of young drug users. One of the most notable impacts of drug legalization is a change in teens' perception of drugs. In the age of legalization, teenagers are growing more tolerant and accepting of drugs. Another effect is that due to the easy access to drugs, more population might be willing to take it, resulting in more children living in a household with multiple drug users. Early exposure to a home divided by drug use can cause a child to feel emotionally and physically neglected and unsafe. As a result, they can become more mentally and emotionally unstable. Children may develop extreme guilt and self-blame for parents' substance use. People who would generally avoid drug use might start taking drugs due to its easy availability. Drug legalization would potentially put a stop to drug-driven gangs and underground drug market. If drug business no longer existed, streets and schools would become much safer. About 1/3 of inmates would not be in prison if it were no longer a crime to have or sell drugs. Major backers of drug legalization. Nearly 8 in 10 Democrats and Democratic Learning Independents say marijuana use should be legal. Republicans and Republican learners are less supportive, with 55% in favor of legalization and 44% opposed. A few organizations who support legalization are Drug Policy Alliance and Law Enforcement Action Partnership. Few organizations who are against drug legalization are American Anti-Drug Council and Drug-Free American Foundation. Conclusion: drug legalization removes all penalties for possession and personal use of a drug. Regulations are typically established to manage where and how legal drugs can be produced, sold, and consumed. Criminal or civil penalties may apply if production, sale, or consumption occurs outside of regulations. Drug legalization can eliminate the criminal activity and increase associated industry jobs and tax revenues. However, it can gradually increase drug sales and consumption, as well as public health and safety harms in population as more people start to use it. And then these are the citations for the sources as used. Thank you.